All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, we are going to open the agenda for Architectural Board of Review for September 8th of 2020 and start with our roll call.
Thank you. This is Mary. I will take the roll call. We have Chair Moore.
Here.
Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Cunningham.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And we have Vice Chair Six, Whalen, and Watkins are absent.
Okay. Hopefully they will show up, or some of them will show up soon.
We just got Dennis. So Dennis Whalen, if you want to turn on your camera and mic.
There he is. Oops. Lost.
Thanks, man.
And yeah, we've got your audio, Mr. Whalen. If I just sent you a webcam request and maybe we can get your web. There we go. All right. Now you're good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks a few.
Okay, thanks for joining us. And now we will move on to public comment. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not on the agenda for today, please raise your hand.
Yes, we don't have any attendees right now, and we did have one item of general public comment. It was sent out to you last week from a Janet. Well, let me get that up. Sorry, I just remembered. And it was regarding the project at 111 West Anamu. I don't have it here, but we did receive one from Janet, and I can pull that up and clarify that at the next meeting. I apologize.
Okay, so if we have no public comment, give it a second or two. We can close public comment and go on to approval of the minutes from the 24th.
I move we accept as presented.
All right. I will second. Oh, Bob beat me to it. Bob seconded that. Any discussion or?
I think that was David.
That was David.
Oh, sorry. Seconded by Mr. Black. Any discussion? No? Okay, then let's have our vote.
All right, we have Chair Moore.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham.
Yes.
Board Member Olson.
Yes.
And Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Mr. Chair, I did find that public comment is from a Jeanette Nadeau, and she is writing about 1812 San Pasquale, and it was received on August 29th.
That's right. I recall that. Okay. And we can move to approval of the consent calendar for the 31st.
All right.
Move we accept as presented.
Yeah. So we have item A, 626 West Coast Street, which was granted project design and final approval. And then we had item B, 29 South Milpas, which was continued to the full board with comments. And I believe there was one more, yeah, item C, 401 South Hope. The proposed changes to the mullions was denied by the consent reviewers.
Okay.
Move we accept as presented.
Oh. I'm sorry, was that a motion? Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes, that was a first by Leon and David. Were you seconding that?
Yes, I can second that.
Okay, let's vote.
All right, we have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, and then moving on to today.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So for today's consent agenda, September 8th, we had a technical difficulty where the link on the agenda was incorrect. So members of the public were unable to join us. So we, all items on this agenda have been postponed 1 week.
Okay, that is unfortunate, but part of what we are going through right now. Okay, so we can move on then to our next.
Oh, we still need a ratification of the minutes.
Oh,
Move we,
okay.
I move we accept as presented.
Okay, I'll second that. And let's have our vote.
All right, we have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
All right. Now we can move on. Okay, any announcements, requests by applicants, etc.?
You sure do. So Board Member Watkins will be absent from today's meeting and Chair Moore will be leaving at 5.
And Mr. Chair, also to let you know that we did hear from Vice Chair 6, and it sounds like he's having some technical issues, maybe with his devices or internet, but he's trying to check in, and hopefully he'll be able to join us soon.
great.
And I have one other announcement. This is a new procedure. Thank you, Timmy, for pulling this up. One of the challenges of not being in person is that when we had in-person meetings, interested members of the public could fill out how to be listed as an interested party and leave that little slip for us, and we would add their contact information. So anytime there would be a notice, a scheduled meeting or hearing for a particular project or address, that person would be notified. So after public comment, we will be offering up this slide on agenda items for members who wish to be able to follow up on different things. So this is what the slide looks like, and we're gonna be using it today for the first time. Thank you.
Okay, great. Is that also on the agenda as well? That gets posted?
Yes, thank you for asking. So we have added the language to the agenda as well in order to, again, be explicit about how people can stay involved in projects.
Great, thank you. I think that's probably it for D. So any subcommittee reports? I don't know that anybody's meeting currently.
This is not a subcommittee report, but they put out a call for any of our members to join the charrette team. And I have offered myself to that. And the first meeting of that particular group is tonight at 7 o'clock.
Great.
I am also a member of a charrette team.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's move on to, we can move on from general business and move on to item number 1, which is 520 East Yananolly Street, concept review. And is a
Chair.
proposal? Yes.
I'm going to step down on this to avoid an appearance of conflict of interest. Thank you.
Can you state why that is?
Yes, we have indirect relationships with the city of Santa Barbara through contracts with others. We do not have any direct contracts, but I simply want to avoid that appearance. So that's why I'm stepping down.
Okay, Thank you. All right, so this is a proposal for the El Estero Water Resource Center Electrical Distribution Renewal Project. Project entails construction of 5 new one-story structures totaling 3,664 square feet of new floor area, housing 5 electrical substations and the main electrical distribution panel. Improvements also include replacing the conduit runs that connect the main panel to the substations throughout the site, upgrade of the waste gas flare system, and upgrade and rehabilitation of the electrical and waste gas flare and the fiber optic telecommunication system. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. This project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, the urban design guidelines, and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. Okay, so it looks like we have our applicant here.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And before we jump in, I was going to remind the applicant about our timer. And so we have it here on screen. We have ask that you try and conclude your presentation within the 15 minutes. And if need be, we can see if you need more time, if there's critical information. If you could introduce yourself and talk us through this.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chair Moore, members of the board. My name is Philip Maldonado. I'm a supervising engineer here with the city of Santa Barbara, and I am the project manager for the El Estero Electrical Renewal Project. These are earlier sets of plans, so you'll see the slight difference in name change. But Matthew, if you could move to the second sheet in this set of plans. This is really what I'm here to discuss. This gives you an overview of the plant site and everything that we are looking to change or renew at the location. And just for a little bit of background, this is a necessary project for a critical infrastructure system that supports all of the processes at El Estero. The goal of the project is to eliminate the risk of failure by replacing the aging electrical distribution system infrastructure, improving redundancy, and eliminating single points of failure within the system. For a little bit of background, the existing electrical distribution system and substations are all original 1970s construction. They are past the end of their useful life and are susceptible to failure, catastrophic failure in general. The electrical system supports all of the other systems within the facility. The critical nature of the system combined with the risk of failure continues to make this work the highest priority for maintaining this facility. And this project focuses on the main power feed and distribution panel, the 5 substations and feed lines connecting all of that equipment, just as you described. And if you take a look at the existing plans, you can see how we plan to replace the existing system by building a system in parallel. That way, we can build the replacement system while maintaining all of the functionality of the existing facility. And just so for your knowledge, the existing 5 substations will be reduced to 3 substations with this configuration. We will also replace the main power feed and main switch gear along with the existing components and some existing components that will remain in place. You can see on the north side of the facility, there will be 3 new buildings installed there. On the west side of the facility, towards the southwest corner, there'll be another building installed in that location. And then on the south side of the facility, there'll be 1 new building plus a new flare that will be installed on that in that south area. If we can, Matthew, if you can move to the site photos, that would be helpful. Because I'd like to walk you through, it's one thing to look at a plan, it's another thing to kind of walk through the site photos to see what exists now, and then I also have some renderings to show you that as to what we believe it'll look like with the new buildings. So this is the north side of the facility where I said the 3 new buildings will be installed. this is where two of those buildings will be installed. This is the view from the street. And down below is the view directly across the street. And if we can move down to the next page. Here is a view on Yananali on that north side of the plant. This is looking east is the upper photo, and down below is looking west, the lower photo, just to give you a feel for the area. It is more of the industrial area within the city, which is why the wastewater treatment plant is located here. So we move down to the next sheet, Matthew. This slides over just slightly to the location of that third building on the north side of the plant. Again, looking from the street, we do have existing screening. You can see just to the right of the upper picture where the main power feed comes in from Edison. There'll be a building adjacent to that behind the screening that you see from the street. And then the lower photo shows looking north in that same location. So if we move down to the next sheet, now I'm taking you to the south side of the facility. The upper photo shows the location of where the new building will go on the south side of the plant. This is facing south, away from the property and looking out towards the ocean, way back in the background there. And then on the lower photo, that's looking north to the nearest right-of-way, which is 500 Street. And that's an entrance to the facility right there, kind of in an alleyway. If we move down to the next, here's looking on the upper photo is looking east from that same location on the south side, and the lower photo is looking west. And in that lower photo, you can also see the existing flare in the background. And as I said before, there will be a new flare going in directly beside that, basically between the existing flare and the fence line. And if we move down, and here is the west side of the facility. Here you actually see an existing electrical substation. We will be putting a building just adjacent to it. You can see the storage containers there. That is where the location of the new building will go, which will be kind of an extension of this existing building. But this gives you a good depiction of the architectural makeup of the facility. The facility itself was designed with review by the Architectural Board of Review. And so there is a uniform aesthetic that is throughout the facility. The lower photo shows looking east away from the property, the neighboring properties there. Like I said, there's lots of screening around this facility. And if we move down, Matthew, to the next sheets, this is again in that same location, looking north on the upper photo and looking south on the lower photo. These are internal to the facility, but right where that next building will be. And so Matthew, if we can go to the renderings. Now that we've walked around the facility, we looked at the site plan, walked around with photos. I do want to show you, I was able to get some renderings from the designer. Here is on the north side of the plant, again, looking at, like I said, to the right is where the Edison feed comes in. This is the main power feed building, the 12 kilovolt building that'll be installed here in this open space. And if we move down, this shows the existing space without the building. So this is what the space looks like and what is directly behind it. And if we move to the next image, this here is the next building over on the north side. It would be the 4 kilovolt building. And if we move down, we can see what the space looks like without that rendering. Like I said, there's not a lot of open space around the facility. So we're trying to find where to locate these buildings. And it also makes the most sense on this northern portion. And if we move to the next photo, this would be right next door to that 4 kilovolt buildings. This is the first substation. And again, these are the 3 buildings on that north side of the facility. And if we move down to the next photo, you'll see here's a better depiction of where those two buildings would sit in that area. And if we go through, we can also see the next two substations. This here is a rendering of what that substation will look like on the east side of the facility, right next to the existing substation. If we move down, you'll see that photo again with the containers there. That's the location where we can set that facility, that building. And then one more time, Matthew, to the next. This is the building on the south side of the facility, the third substation. And once again, if we go to the next image, you'll see this is what the space looks like with that, currently what the space looks like. So at this point, if you'd like to go back once again to the plans, thank you, Matthew. This hopefully gives you a little bit better context of what this plan depicts and how we plan to replace a critical piece of infrastructure. Like I said, we made sure to pull out the existing architectural elements that were approved with the original facility, and that's what has been incorporated in. So we feel like we have substantially conformed to the existing aesthetic of the facility and the surrounding area. And then, of course, we are including the lighting standards. Just to keep in mind, these facilities are utility in nature. They are not made for continuous human occupancy. They will have high voltage power equipment installed within them, and they really are there to keep the plant functioning as it is intended. So with that, I'll leave it to the board if you have any questions or would like to add any input for this project. That'd be much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Let's open public comment now. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the board regarding this project, please raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see any attendees at this point. The only one we have is actually a panelist for a later thing. So,
okay.
And we did not receive any written public comment.
Okay, great. Then we will close public comment and go to questions. Oh, go ahead, Matthew.
One thing to consider, I should have made this announcement at the beginning. This project does need a coastal development permit, so this will need to go to the Planning Commission. So keep in mind that we will need to make if you send this on to Planning Commission today, the project compatibility, preliminary take on the project compatibility analysis.
Okay. So we're going to move on to questions from the board. If we could have the applicant back up on screen here. There they are. Okay. I guess I'll start off with just a couple of general questions. Are any of these buildings going to be actually visible from Yananali Street or any of the surrounding streets?
Chair Moore, members of the board, yes, the buildings along the north side will be, I would say, partially visible. Like I said, I took photos from the street to show what is already screening the existing facility. And these will be basically, as you can see in the plan here, they will be nestled against the existing buildings. The existing buildings will be taller than these new buildings being installed. So it'll be limited view from the street.
Okay, so the buildings, for instance, the new 4K power building and the new substation 1 will be visible. And then the 12 kV power building, that will be visible as well?
Correct. Yeah, you can see Yananali Street is adjacent right there. There is a fence line that runs on the backside of the sidewalk there, and then along with the tree line in between. Okay.
And are these buildings raised for flood issues?
Actually,
or are you going to keep them on grade?
They will be on grade for the most part. The entire facility is actually at an elevated elevation. when it was originally constructed in the 70s. Everything here was put in on fill and raised well above the floodplain at that point. It may be slightly above grade, just given the current flood elevations, but we're working through that as part of the design.
Okay. Now, do you have an actual elevation of the building showing the height of the roof and all that? Can we flip to those drawings then?
Yes, we do.
Great.
Right there, and I believe we're just above 15 feet on the elevations for these buildings.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions from the board? You can just raise your hand so I can see you. Mr. Whalen, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Mr. Maldonado, the proposed buildings do look quite elegant and in character with the existing building, but did I understand you correctly? The new buildings are taller than the existing buildings?
Chair Moore, Board Member Whalen, no, the new buildings will be shorter than the existing buildings. The existing buildings are process buildings and they're much higher.
I misunderstood. My next is somewhere in between a question and a comment. I found your site photographs to be quite disorienting and poorly lit, and I really couldn't understand where I was within your presentation. I realize this is all utilities, but some photoshopping or some other method of informing the board of the visual impact would have been appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Who else has questions? Leon, why don't you go ahead?
Early on in your slides, one of the first 3 or 4 slides, you showed a slide of the landscaping that was existing. And can you locate that picture for me and try to show me where that was on your site plan? I was a little disoriented also.
Absolutely. If you go to the renderings, Matthew, I think that might be a little bit, it'd be what we're looking at. So if you move to the next slide, you'll see the existing site. If you go down a few more photographs, yeah. This one, and actually if you go 2 more down, I think it has a better depiction of the landscaping. There you go. Board Member Olson, I believe this might be what you're talking about. Is that correct?
No, there was one even earlier than this, I believe. It was taken from the car and it showed landscaping or plants anyway on the outside of the fence of what I believe was the property. Would you?
Okay. Absolutely. Maybe go down a little bit, Matthew, when we're from the street facing the facility. So one of the, this is from Yananali Street, looking south at the existing facility. As I said, there is behind the sidewalk at the back side of the sidewalk, there is a fence line with vines for screening. Behind that is a tree line that runs along the northern perimeter of the plant. And then you can see the line of the existing building for the facility just behind that. Correct. Now that is approximately 2 stories in elevation, and the new building will be nestled against that at approximately 1 story, that 15-foot. So that's, what I try to do, because we are looking at multiple locations around the entire facility, and it is a fairly large facility. I do apologize for the orientation. It's hard to gauge what'll be the most orienting, and that's why I tried to start with the plan view and go from north to south to the east side of that plan view. This here is looking at the north side off of Yananali Street. Like I said, Yananali Street has this continuous fence line and tree line for screening on that side.
Thank you. And I assume you've met the required setbacks. On one of the pictures too, it looked like one of the new buildings was quite close to the sidewalk. And again, I was a little disoriented on that particular picture. But the question is that the assumption is here you've met all the required setbacks.
Yes,
Thank you.
Chair Moore, Board Member Olson. If you look at the plan sheet, Matthew, that'll show you where the right-of-way lines are on Yananali. And then it, like I said, this will be well inside the plant facility, away from that right-of-way along Yananali Street.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, anybody else?
Question.
Mr. Chair. Sorry, Mr. Black had his hand up first. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
ahead.
Question, are you going to have to remove any landscaping, existing landscaping in order to construct these buildings or no?
Chair Moore, Board Member Black, yes, there will have to be a few trees primarily on that north side that you see that will be removed.
And so can you show us a plan at some point locating where those trees are to be removed? And are there any opportunities to replace them and provide additional screening where some is being removed? Or not only there on Yananali, because I am familiar with that site, but are there any other opportunities for screening elsewhere on the property? And is that possible?
Chair Moore, Board Member Black, it's limited. I would defer to maybe your insight. We are not taking away necessarily screening on the north side. The screening is in that buffer space that is between Yananali Street and the hardscape of the interior of the facility. On the south side, if we scroll down on the plan sheet, Matthew, on the south side, the building there, we will be putting that building will be on hardscape, existing hardscape, and any additional open space around that will be for stormwater BMP installation. And then you see the dark line on the south side, that is a fence line. So there's a very limited green space there, but there is that green space that is available. And then on the east side, the building just substation number 2 on the east side, I'm sorry, on the west side, Matthew, I apologize. At substation number 2, that again is on existing hardscape. And if you see, there's a roadway adjacent to that. And then the edge there is Laguna Channel. And so that's within the 50-foot buffer zone of that channel there. So I don't know what leeway we have for installing any additional screening there, although it is already, the photos I had there showed it's pretty well grown in on that side of the facility.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem.
Okay, Mr. Six, if you have questions.
Yes, I noticed that the existing buildings, I assume are cast in place concrete. These are precast. The new ones are precast concrete, panelized.
Chair Moore, Board Member Six, I believe they'll actually be cast in place and then with that fluted cast on the exterior.
Okay, so it will be cast in place. It says precast in your notes, but if it will be, so your objective is to exactly match the existing building, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then just one question, additional question. Well, it involves several. Why, especially on the west side, substation one and the new power building are adjacent to each other but separated? Can those be unified into one continuous building of a bigger form to kind of harmonize with the bigger form of the building, or did I miss something?
Chair Moore and Board Member Six, I don't have an answer for you right now. One of the things the designer did attempt to do is maintain existing walkways and access ways. So I'd have to take a look at whether or not there's a door entrance there that they were trying not to block, or if there is an electrical code requirement that requires the separation of those buildings. Those would be some of the things that may require them, but other than that, I couldn't tell you for certain.
And I'm eyeballing that one substation one and the new 4.16 kV power building are slightly different widths. And why is that?
I'd have to look at the plan sections. Do we have those in the plan sheets?
The width dimensions are not on the plans, so.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I apologize. We did receive updated plans, and unfortunately, I was not able to get them in front of you before this meeting.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? No? Okay. You don't happen to have, sorry, this is to the applicant, you don't happen to have an aerial photo showing this site in relation to the neighborhood, do you?
Chair Moore, no, I did not submit that except for the on the cover sheet here where you can see the plan view of the surrounding area. I don't have the aerial though.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to comments. So this is concept review. So let's try and keep it sort of high level. Let's not get too down in the details yet. And see if we can give comments that would relate to a planning commission review. So that type of level. So are we comfortable with the direction of the design and the mass, bulk, and scale, those sorts of things, and any issues like suggestions for landscape screening, etc., would be appropriate, I think, at this time. Okay. Mr. Whalen, would you like to make any comments?
Conceptually, the proposal seems just fine. I do think some additional landscape along Yanonali Street to screen the new devices would be in order. I'll leave any further comment to our landscape designers and architects.
Okay. Mr. Black, your comments.
Yeah, I mean, architecturally, I think the proposed buildings look fine. Like Mr. Whalen, I was a little bit concerned about the landscape along Yanonali. That seems to be the most obvious view from the public way of the new buildings. I would like to have, when you come back, provide a more detailed site plan, at least for that area near Yanonali, illustrating any and all landscape that's going to be removed. And I'd like you to look at what opportunities there are, because I can't tell from the site plan what planting areas you actually have available. I know the fence is along Yanonali, but inside the fence, and whether there's any opportunities there to provide any requisite screening of the new buildings. Those are my only comments.
Okay, Mr. Six, your comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say, I would concur with the previous comments, that, I'm relying on the fact that it's cast in place concrete to match existing. I would make, efforts to unify the two buildings, at least in width, if there's, has to be a gap, if there does not have to be a gap, to unify the two adjacent buildings, or even three adjacent buildings along the west side of the north elevation. And I noticed in the renderings that the metal coping is contrasting color. And the larger building does not have any coping, and I would suggest that if there's a coping, that it be painted out to match the concrete texture color, the color.
Okay,
Those are my comments.
Mr. Olson, your comments?
I concur, especially with actually all the comments that have been made by the board members, especially this, those that Mr. Six has just made about the caps and the coping. And I would also add one about the landscaping, which is the assumption that I would make is that the staging area would be re-landscaped after the completion of the project. And maybe you could include that in your plans. That's all.
Okay, I don't have anything further to add. I would, this is a question for staff. So their goal is to move on to the planning commission. It sounds like we, as a board in general, want some additional information about, particularly along the Ananolli Street, and what's existing and what's proposed. So it might make sense for them to come back one more time to show us what's going on there and what their hope is before they move on to the planning commission, so we can give them more positive comments. That was a question for Matthew.
Mr. Chair, can you repeat the question? I apologize.
Sorry. It sounds like the applicant obviously is wishing to get in front of the planning commission as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like the board in general is looking for a little bit more information about what's going on along the Ananolli Street, what's existing and what's proposed as far as landscape, et cetera. So I could see there being a motion to continue it to the planning commission, but there may not be all favorable comments and maybe some constructive criticism. Is it
Right, so just like
would it be better in the app? Yeah.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, would it be better for the applicant to come back one more time and get full feedback, or hopefully good feedback, or what is
my take on it?
Yeah.
You could send it to this the planning commission and with the conditions for enhanced landscaping screening for the structures along Ananolli. That type of work typically isn't what this planning commission would review for a coastal development permit anyways. It's mostly about the buildings.
Right.
So I will leave it to the discretion of the board, but I see a benefit both ways. And it would be great to have all positive comments, but I don't necessarily think that asking for more landscaping is something that would be a make or break deal for the planning commission in their review of the coastal development permit.
Okay. Well, then what I'm going to do is thank you for that, Matthew. I'm going to make a motion to continue the project to the planning commission with the following comments: that the board in general is or accepts the design of or I guess the mass bulk scale and current design of the structures as proposed. The board has concerns about the removal of landscaping along Yananali to construct the project, and would like to see additional landscaping and landscape design to screen these new buildings. And that all the building details shall match the existing buildings. And they'll have the chance to be coming back to us to show us what they've done, and we can continue to work with them to finalize that.
And can we also get the project compatibility analysis in the?
Okay, so at this time, at the conceptual level, the project is consistent with or complies with the city charter and municipal code and is consistent with the design guidelines. As the existing site is industrial in nature and the proposed project intends to match the existing character, it is consistent with the design guidelines. It is compatible with the character of that neighborhood as it is a more utilitarian zone, and it is matching the existing design aesthetic of what's on site. And it is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, height, and scale at this time, as it is relatively similar to what is existing on site. It is sensitive to historic resources. There are no, as we're not aware of any nearby. And it does not appear that there's any impact to public views of the ocean or mountains at this time. And conceptually, it provides an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping, and that is contingent upon the applicant providing a landscape plan that is acceptable to the board.
Second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? Yes, Mr. Whalen.
Wouldn't be a part of your motion, but I would like to suggest that Mr. Maldonado and his team, to facilitate their presentations, prepare a graphic that illustrates the point of view of the photographs that they submit.
Yes, that's, I think, just in general, a good practice to help the board understand what's going on. Okay, any other discussion? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
All right, thank you. This is Mary. I will take the roll call vote. We have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
and we have Board Member Olson,
Yes.
Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Could I
Okay,
figure
thank
out
you
a
very
way
much.
Could I figure out a way to put a little lilt in my yes, like Richard has just done there?
I didn't realize
Yeah.
that. Now I apologize.
What?
All right.
That's good.
Practice, that's all it takes.
All right. Okay, how are we doing on time here? We've got item number 2 queued up. Are we scheduled for 4? So technically we could start. Is that correct, Matthew?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have the applicant. We do. There he is. Okay. So this is item number 2, and this is 1911 De La Vina Street. This is a concept review and is a proposal for a mixed-use remodel. And the project entails remodeling multiple facades of an existing 5,535 square foot, 1-story non-residential structure. Also proposed is the internal reconfiguration of the structure from office and laundromat space to an art studio and laundromat. Project proposes site improvements and a parking lot and vehicular circulation improvements. An accessory dwelling unit will be permitted under a separate permit above a new 6-vehicle tandem carport. Scope of work also entails landscaping improvements. No change to the existing single-unit residence is proposed. No final appealable decision will be made in this hearing. This project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, the urban design guidelines, and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. Okay. Before we jump into this question for staff regarding the ADU, is that something that we are looking at as the design board, or is that out of our scope?
So thank you, Mr. Chair, for asking that question. The ADU will be submitted directly to Building and Safety without design review per California state law. However, the board does have purview over the parking areas. So the carport doesn't directly serve the AUD, from my understanding. It's a tandem parking for the art studio, so you do have that area. But anything basically from the floor of the ADU to the roof, or anything in terms of circulation, you can't comment on at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And then before the applicant gets started, I just want to let you know that we have a 15-minute timer there on the screen. And we ask that you try your best to limit your presentation to that time. If we see that you need a little bit more time, we can try and give that to you. All right, if you could introduce yourselves and locate where this project is for us.
Mr. Chair, quick interruption. If I could just ask all the board members to please mute yourself during the applicant's presentation, just so we don't pick up any background noise. Thank you.
Okay, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chair Moore and board members. My name is Michael Holliday. I'm the architect for this project with DMHA, and also Courtney Miller with Courtney Miller Landscape Architects is going to be presenting the landscape. The project is 1911 De La Vina, and this is just a cover sheet. So we'll go to the next sheet to orient you to the site and show you a little bit more about existing conditions. The image on the lower right is pretty much tells the whole story right there. It's really an existing dated building that's in a laundromat, actually, that opens right out there onto De La Vina. And then there's a driveway that allows passage through to the inside. You can kind of blow that up a little bit. The building on the right is existing. It's not on our site. And we've kind of got an interesting driveway situation with the property line running down, not quite the center of that street, but we only own a portion. Well, most of that street belongs to our property. If you scroll up a little bit, you can kind of see some of the context for this project. Yeah, there's a sort of backside, which is in the, if we go to on the upper right hand, you can see the site and where it is located in context to the commercial buildings, as well as the other residential buildings that are sort of all around it, which is why the ADU makes sense on the backside of the site. The two images on the left side show the view from the back alley portion, looking back towards De La Vina, so you can actually drive all the way through the site. The building on the left there in the upper left corner is a residential structure as well, and the fence is not actually even built on the property line, so the property line is actually out about 3.5 feet to the left, where the demarcation is between the darker chip seal and the asphalt. The lower building shows the existing structure, which is a kind of a modernist, simple, straightforward box of a building that we're trying to clean up quite a bit. So that just gives you some context for the back view and the front view of the property. We can come back to these if there's any questions. Let's go to the next. Thing. This just shows some context and some of the buildings that are on the site. This site's got property's got an interesting history. It's got an existing residence right in the center of the site that we're really not doing anything to. It's that sort of gable roof building there, right there in the middle. And you can see on the photos at the lower right, that's the context of existing residences in the area. So these are just some context shots. We can come back to them if there's any questions. Next slide. This is a survey. Kind of gives you a little bit of orientation of the site. We can zoom in on this a little bit. De La Vina is to the right. You can see where the property line is kind of split with that driveway right down there to the building. We share that. The laundromat is in the very front, and there's no interior work proposed to that right now. We will be doing the interiors of both these projects eventually, but right now this project's all about the exterior. All of the parking there is pretty much non-conforming existing. We've done a series of research exercises with historical entitled uses, so we're kind of fixing all the non-conforming existing parking spaces, and the entire site is basically covered in asphalt or buildings, so it's almost highly impermeable. The survey gives you a sense for what we're dealing with. Let's go to the next slide. This kind of shows you the context that we're working within: the existing single-story commercial building down below, the existing one-story residential building up above, and the existing one-story commercial building towards the front, which is not on our property. So essentially what we're doing is doing a facelift to it almost ends up being the northwest elevation, the upward elevation of the building, and reworking all the parking and providing ADA compliant path of travel to the public way and to the parking all the way in the back, so that if you look at that ADA parking space and loading area in the rear, and then we're creating a ADA compliant walkway all the way across the front of the building. Kind of run your hand along the front. It doesn't comply right now, so that is we're widening that to comply, and we're adding a little planter and some pavers, permeable pavers for some parking. Working with the existing site and setbacks allows us to put that little ADU up in the upper left-hand corner. That's not part of what we're going to be presenting, and he even plans to construct right now, but we do want to put in parking that allows for this future ADU to kind of be over the top of that parking. So just shows that we've been able to kind of just fit that in there. The trash and recycle bin is at the lower left-hand side of this, right down there. That actually backs up to the existing trash and recycle bin on the adjacent site, so it's sort of a perfect complementary use for that area. The dumpsters will be able to be rolled out onto Sheridan and serviced by Marburg. We've already got Marburg's approval on that whole layout, and that's also ADA compliant. Next slide. Just shows path of travel, how we're connecting the front pedestrian way, the walkway out there along De La Vina to the handicap space all the way in the back. And then there's a pathway that's just connecting this across to the existing residential use, which is not associated with this building, but that's the one place, if there was pedestrian travel, it would go across right there in the center of the site. Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to let Courtney come back to landscape after I talk about the building a little bit, but we can explain what we're doing on the exterior here in a minute. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, we can zoom in on the upper drawing a little bit. This shows how that we're essentially adding that new walkway all the way along the top side of the drawing there, and that little planter area, which is going to be the little bit of the curvilinear element, is a new planter that we're adding all the way across the front of the building to protect the people from the parking, and also to create a new sort of landscape buffer to that west elevation, which really gets kind of baked by the sun in the afternoon. We got a lot of glass there that we're proposing. Well, it's actually existing, and we're just replacing it with new energy efficient glazing. No interior work proposed on the scope for the laundromat. The next slide will show the exterior. That's what we're dealing with right now. That's the existing building. Pretty much no talent. Modernist structure combined with this sort of pseudo Spanish facade on De La Vina side. And the next slide indicates what we're proposing, which is, we can zoom in on that a little. These are the Revit drawings, essentially kind of reskinning the face of the building on the proposed northwest elevation, and on the De La Vina elevation to the drawing right below that. So that's going to be a TimberTech exterior facade element that's basically going to conceal that existing roof and kind of create a consistent modernist image for the overall complex. So the building actually looks like one consistent idea. The next image is in color, is probably going to read a lot more strongly. There we go. If you can zoom in on that top image, it'll kind of show you what we're really proposing to do here. All the way at the left is a new element that it's the minimum size that we needed to enclose the existing roof, but we're trying to leave it there and just not see it. We are going to remove the tile and waterproof it. If you can zoom in a little bit on that upper elevation, you can get a sense. You got some pretty nice 3D images of what this is going to look like, but you can get a sense for how that planter is going to be basically concealing the walkway back behind it. Yeah, there you go. If you just zoom in on that. We've got some new rooftop equipment. So those are some roof mechanical screens that are concealing that. And this is going to be an art gallery, so a slingshot art gallery for developmentally disabled kids that are going to be in there. So it's we like the idea that the glazing is going to be maintained and it's going to be able to show off the work that the students are in there. If we go to the lower elevation, I want to leave time here for Courtney to, that's the back. We're just painting the building, kind of a dark potato skin, almost a charcoal gray, warm charcoal gray. But the middle elevation on the right there shows what it's going to look like along De La Vina, exactly. Happy Laundry is proposing to stay in there. So we're just proposing to reskin that building. And again, this will be a TimberTech material. We've used this pretty successfully on habits all over Southern California, but it's a nice synthetic wood material made out of recycled milk jugs that's got a nice flat finish to it, but it actually looks like a real solid wood material. And that gives you a sense for what the look is going to be looking down that walkway, trying to add a significant amount of landscaping. We can zoom out on this. We need to go back to landscape here. After this, let's see what we've got here. Next image. Oh, this is a little ADU. Again, just a simple little structure that would be sitting over the parking. So it's for reference only. We've got it to fit. I want to leave Courtney time to cover the landscape. So maybe we can go back to that plan and zoom in a little bit on the kind of landscape elements. Yeah, there you go. Courtney, why don't you kind of walk us through this, as well as there's an updated plan that didn't get to ABR in time for today's presentation, but I'm going to let Courtney walk us through the elements.
Thanks, Michael. So as Michael mentioned, I think the goal here was to address as much landscaping as we could get, given the constraints of the site. So we really wanted to have a much better pedestrian experience and a better buffer between the existing one-story commercial building on the bottom of the plan and the drive aisle adjacent to it. So right now it's pretty bleak. It's just concrete adjacent to the building and then an asphalt parking lot. So Michael and I stood out there and kind of, came up with this concept of implementing a trellis structure along the north side of the building. And we've got kind of a skinny planter that runs between the walkway and the parking area. The plant palette is mostly greens and kind of textural plant material. we're looking at Juncus right now for that planter, but might be looking for alternatives. But basically, you know, narrow textural plantings that can kind of thrive in that reduced planting area condition. And then we have vines growing across the top of the trellis there. We're hoping to do improved hardscape in the new parking areas. So that's denoted with the kind of the brick pattern, permeable pavers. And then we have some new patio areas. So at the back of the existing commercial building, there's a roll-up door where the hand is currently indicating. And there's going to be a little outdoor space there. So we'll have a patio along the rear of the property between the alley and our property. As you saw in the photos right now, it's just a wood fence on top of asphalt. So the idea there is to implement raised planters and really kind of help privatize that part of this property and give it a little bit more landscape screening and privacy. So along the back there, we're showing Brahia palms. Our client has asked to switch that out, which didn't get reflected on this plan, but they're looking at Phoenix dactylifera. Our client is very interested in plants, so he has a lot of great ideas for you know, what to implement here. We also are proposing, I think, multi-king palms, which is the other palm symbol that you'll see. Kind of, there's 3 of those. And then we have a series of existing trees, and you can see those with the kind of the washed out green hatch. There's one there, that's a canary palm, that's right on the property line. We'll be keeping that. Along the north property line, there are 3 or 4 kind of property line, you know, trees there. Most are on the neighboring property, and then there's one smaller ficus tree which has the X, and that will be removed. And then just to the right, plan right of that, there is another ficus tree and a fan palm which will be remaining. I believe that's it. For the
And I think
walkway, we're thinking about a linear paver, and then that's it. Michael?
I'm going to say, if we go back to the 3D images on the front, you can kind of get a sense for the first page, zooming in a little bit on the front. This is this, you know, concept review, but we know it works. So that gives you a sense for how that's going to be transformed. And then the lower image shows what it's going to be like in the center of the site with kind of the darker, warm, dark gray colored building, and then the little trellis elements that are out in front. So it's kind of just a reskinning of the existing structure. So that's an overview and of the project, and kind of concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you for that. Good job on the timing. Appreciate that. So we're going to open public comment for this item. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the board?
Yes, if you are joining us from the public and wish to speak, there is a hand icon in the top right-hand corner of your screen. If the arrow is red, that indicates that it is raised. We do have Miss Sheila Lodge who would like to speak, so I'm unmuting her now, and she'll have to unmute herself as well. And we'll wait until we hear her voice before we start the timer.
Okay, if you could wait just a moment. Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Okay, if you could wait just a moment until I need, well, in any event, I will go ahead. I'm really perplexed to see this design. I'm speaking for myself, by the way. I'm really perplexed to see this design, especially given that the function of the ABR and all the design different sets of guidelines refer to Santa Barbara's historic and distinctive and distinguished architectural past. This would be such a jarring element in the streetscape here. There's no relationship whatever to the buildings around it. And it is, I don't know, David Gebhardt, the architectural historian, might have called it San Francisco Bay Area period 3 style, but it is not, it doesn't say anything that reflects Santa Barbara. That doesn't mean that it has to be white stucco and a red tile roof. But this is, to me, quite inappropriate, and I hope you will ask the architect to come back with a design that looks as if it belongs in Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lodge. All right, so we'll bring back up that public comment slide. So if anyone else wishes to speak, please raise your hand now. Give it a couple seconds. We did not receive any written correspondence for this item. And I'm not seeing anyone, but if we could just bring up that slide for the public who wish to be interested parties on this project. So here is the information that you will need to sign up for for any future meetings that this item might come before the board. So you can email the ABR secretary, you could give the ABR secretary a call, or you can send in a USPS letter requesting to be added to the list. All right, so I'm not seeing anyone else, Mr. Chair, so I'll send it over to you.
Okay, so we will close public comment and ask the board members to come on screen. All right. And we'll go into questions. Mr. Whalen, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do have a couple. Thank you, Chair Moore. First on sheet G011, this is very minor clarification. Yes, if you could zoom in on the upper right image and really zoom in. The project area line appears to indicate the building next door. This may just be some out of sync thing with Google Earth, but that is not the site. Am I correct?
That's correct. That somehow is shifted off. We followed the red line there was just to show approximate locations, but something got shifted. You could see where the line you can see the buildings there. So good call there.
Thank you, Michael. That's easy to see. Second question, how much higher is the proposed change at the laundry entry than the existing?
Yeah, good question. And kind of to the public comment, if you look at this entire building, it's been there for about 50 years and it's a modernist structure that just has a little facade of red tile roof on the front. So the whole building envelope, the 95% of that building is a very simple, straightforward structure that we're trying to rehab and renovate that doesn't have red tile roofs on it. So that's kind of, I don't know if that's the answer to your question there, but just to put the context of this building in some understanding, it's clearly not a red tile roof and white plaster wall building right now.
Well, thank you, Michael. My question really isn't contextual, it's more factual. How much taller is the proposed facade from the existing facade?
Yeah,
it looks to be quite a bit.
It's the same. Sorry, Dennis, I didn't answer your question. Yeah, it's essentially we've taken the height of the roof and we just wanted to screen that. So that's and you really got to zoom in on that the picture of this building. There's no way to add the weight of this tile roof on the structure is actually sagging the structure. It's the structural engineer is even concerned about. We're cleaning that up. Removing the tile is going to be removed and recycled. The waterproofing will be kept, so it'll be a 90-pound cap flashing. And then we're just setting the height of that ridge is going to be concealed. And the building on the left-hand side, that is part of our structure, which is a simple, box of a building. So it's really just the corner of this building that's got any semblance for, kind of traditional Spanish colonial revival. And also, if you look at the buildings right across the street, we're right in scale and in architectural context with what's there. So we're trying to create this is going to be an art complex. So we're trying to create kind of an artistic, interesting, look at the buildings right across the street in the upper right-hand corner have absolutely zero context for, much of what's Santa Barbara. So we're trying to kind of create something that's going to blend with the existing structures as much as possible without going above the height. So to respond to your question.
That did answer my height question, but veered into the surrounding architecture again. A couple of questions for Courtney, please. That the previous photo you showed of the entryway, what are the changes that are proposed for that laundry patio wall? Right now, it looks to have a lattice on it, and the proposal doesn't really look like that. Could you talk about that, Courtney?
Sure, and I think Michael might need to chime in here too, because we kind of work together on that element. But I believe the idea was that we would be rebuilding it. I think we're going to need to be doing some retaining there because there's a grade change, and the existing cross slope and longitudinal slope don't currently meet ADA. So we'll be, fixing that, and then the wall itself, I think, concrete. Michael, what do you guys currently?
Yeah, that's going to be it's currently a non-conforming existing condition that doesn't work. We've got to retain a little bit of grade. We can't modify the street slope of the sidewalk. So we're just putting in a CMU retaining wall essentially and plastering that so that you can sit out on that patio and enjoy the laundromat, but also have, a secure space that doesn't slough. We don't have the grade and water from the site above dripping down onto this property. So we're kind of resolving all the drainage issues in that front entry area.
Thank you. That answers my question. And one final one for both Courtney and Michael. What is the difference between boardwalk paving and concrete paving?
Yeah, so thank you. I think we like the idea of having potentially a linear paver. It's indicated as boardwalk paving on the plan, but I think that's just, talking about the pattern itself. But we'd like to do some kind of paver, concrete paver product where it's indicated as boardwalk paving, and then otherwise enhanced concrete would be probably colored scored concrete. And of course, we'd be in keeping with the stormwater requirements as well. So whatever that
Thank you. Those are all my questions, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, do you have any questions?
I don't have questions. I just have comments.
Okay, Mr. Cunningham, questions?
Yes, thank you. My dog's a little agitated, so she may interrupt me here, but I'll go ahead. Okay, we have the landscape plan in front of us. That is good. I am interested in knowing what kind of accommodations have you made for the Morton Bay fig and the Canary Island palm that are off-site, but well, I guess the palm is sharing the property line. It seems like, well, anyway, please answer that question. Have you investigated what you need to do to accommodate those trees for future growth?
Courtney, I'll let you handle that one.
Sure, thank you. I think we haven't made any yet.
Okay.
Being the operative word. So I think we're having a similar issue along that property line where there's a grade differential. And so what's indicated on the plan is an elevated planter. And so it looks like the fig is right you know, in conflict with that, right on the edge of it. Actually, there's two there, so they're very close. And same with the Pepper. And so we would need to address that as we move forward with, you know, design documents.
Okay, thank you. Have you,
I was just going to comment, the existing site condition is asphalt almost right up to the property line. So that's currently asphalted all underneath the tree canopy.
okay, you talking about both those trees, Mike?
Yes, that whole area right now is all, we can look at the site photos, just all solid asphalt. So we're
Okay,
going to
well,
try to improve.
It's, thank you. Have you discussed the possibility of opening a parkway and installing a street tree on De La Vina Street?
No, we have
No,
not.
we haven't.
Okay. What is the proposed use or the design for the long open space running along the south side of the building? Is that simply for utility use?
Yeah, that's, if we can't get this sort of simple facelift approved, the building's just going to stay the way it is. So it's going to basically be that we've tried to come up with the least expensive, most transformative revision to the front. The back of the building there is just going to be painted. It's the back entryway, so service exits for the existing one-story commercial.
Okay, thank you. Now, can we go to the south elevation of the building where we see where the Timber Tech transitions to the dark gray paint? There we go. Yeah, the right hand end of, no, I think the lowest elevation. This is the back. Yeah, there you go.
That's the back side. Yeah, there.
Okay,
That also responds to board member Whalen's comment about the height. We've just taken the existing box, which is on the, we're leaving that there, and we're just trying to tie this one building together so it looks like one building.
Okay, understood. Did you consider wrapping the raised element of the building at the far right hand end with the Timber Tech rather than stopping it at the point where you have?
We did the scope creep on this project is it's gonna, if we can't do something simple, it's just gonna be a painted building. So we had to stop it somewhere, and we're trying to cover up the one corner piece of the building which really didn't fit with the whole rest of the structure.
Okay. One final question. Have you considered using the Timber Tech on the HVAC screens on the rooftop? Seems like you've got, I mean, I understand what you're doing with the screening, but it just seems like there's an opportunity there to extend the enrichment of the building to elements that are, you know, plainly visible and maybe could be made to look a little more cohesive with the rest of the architecture.
Yeah,
that's a question, obviously followed by a comment.
Chair Moore, board member Cunningham, that's a great suggestion. That was actually another thought that we had. So if you go up to the upper elevation, you can see how that would help to sort of unite all the, you know, carrying that Timber Tech material all the way through. That's a good suggestion.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, Mr. Black, do you have any questions?
I have no additional questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Six, questions?
Yeah, so it's perhaps a question for staff, or if the applicant has already verified this. And I know that we're not commenting today on the new ADU unit, but if it's automatically out of our jurisdiction, does it not have to follow the objective design standards?
So the standards that this ADU is required to adhere to are zoning standards. There used to be an objective ADU design checklist that was submitted alongside any application in the city for an ADU. However, state law has made that null and void, and we're working on our own new ADU ordinance that is in compliance with state law, but as of right now, we do not have the jurisdiction to control any design.
So the objective design standards that kind of follow after the El Pueblo Viejo standards are not applicable to these ADUs, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That is my questions.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple of questions, mainly to do with the context. So can we go back to the photo sheet showing the buildings adjacent? Okay. So in the upper left, that's across the street?
That's the other side. The context is a whole sort of
I
mishmash
see,
of
okay.
but buildings. For the far right is McConnell's, which is a concrete box of a building. Then you got sort of another structure setback. Then there's this little kind of pseudo.
Can we zoom out so we can see all the images that he's, thank you. So let's just go one by one. So in the upper right, that is across the street. Is that correct?
That's correct. Directly across the street is a series of sort of modernist buildings with brick and reflective glass and horizontal parapets and so forth.
Okay.
There's
and then to the left of that image,
the left of that
4.
image is building to the north of our structure, which is also slated for a renovation. So our hope, the people that are moving into this building are an art group, and so they really want to kind of create a presence of an artist. They love the funk zone. They love that kind of area. They can't afford it, so they've taken this sort of rundown building. That's the goal of what we're trying to create here, is a little bit of an artist area. But that building will remain. It's not on our site.
Okay.
Other sheet kind of shows I think it's really important to understand what we're working with here. Maybe I think it's G011. Well, and the the images on the upper left-hand corner, this really shows the context of what we're dealing with. It's 95% horizontal, straightforward, and the drawings pretty much show that. That's what we're dealing with. So we can't add any structure to the roof. We can't add tile roofs. We can't, the building will accommodate it.
Okay, so can we slide over to the right and get the bird's eye view a little bit? Maybe this will be more illustrative for us. So if we get closer to the De La Vina portion, could zoom in on that. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So this is really the question, or the crux of the question. On this block, we've got admittedly a mismatch or a mishmash of buildings and heights and design, but what buildings along this site, in your view, are modern versus what buildings have a little bit more of a simple Santa Barbara style? And that's a pretty broad interpretation, but it's something that's sort of a storefront with some plaster and some typical Santa Barbara elements. So could you kind of
If you
walk
look
us
at
through those?
all the buildings across the street are all, it's more of a modernist type structure. You can see the horizontal parapets. That's the context. And even the building directly to the south of us it looks like it's got a little tile roof, but it's a kind of a strange combination of architectural styles. But our little build, so the immediate context for the De La Vina area is decidedly modern, albeit needs to be updated and refreshed. There are this little pocket of buildings that to the left, which there's a couple kind of tile roof structures that we felt like could remain and kind of continues that, the existing neighborhood character, if you will. The building to the immediate north of that is completely different stylistic as well is the McConnell's building. So we're trying to kind of come up with an idea that actually may be transformative for that area, not unlike the Funk Zone, which is, very different. And I was just down there this weekend. It was unbelievable how well adapted some of those buildings have been. But that's the context, Chair Moore.
Okay. And did you study any alternatives to the wood siding? For instance, did you look at a stucco version of that or a plastered version of that?
The idea of it's actually the client who just purchased the site really doesn't want to do this even. We convinced him that if we just leave the roof there, we remove the tile because it's got to come off there anyway. Structurally, it's not designed to carry that heavy tile roof. Even the buildings next door are sort of overly stressed. So this could be a white, well, it becomes a plaster element. I don't know. I think it's probably going to die if it'll just be repainted. The idea started in the back where Courtney and I were thinking about how could we reskin the west face. It's really southwest facing element of that building. And so that's where the trellis element, the integral color plaster planter, the permeable pavers, and the entrance for the slingshot. If you zoom into the bottom image, because these two things kind of go together, this is probably 90% of the project is this little reskin of the building, which was going to be some trellis elements to just soften that facade. So that became just this kit of parts, and the TimberTech was just a material that we knew we could use that was cost effective, that would just create a sense of entrance for that front area.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all of my questions. Are there any follow-up questions from board members? Oh, Mr. Whalen, yes, go ahead.
One small one. Could you go back to the existing photo of the laundry entry? There appears to be a support post.
Yeah. That's what we're going to call it with, guys. That'll be painted gray.
It's very asymmetrical and, well, words fail me on how to describe that. Is that structural, Michael? Is that holding up?
That is holding up that whole front of the building, which is loaded by all that tile roof load. That's why the tile roof's really got to come off. If we touch it, we can't stop. That's the problem. And so the tile roof has to go away. And therefore we said,
if I may, a follow-up, the proposed building will actually move that support farther out to the current limits of the awning tile edge, correct?
That's correct. We're cutting back the edge of the roof a little bit. And then if you go to that front entrance, it's pretty dangerous pedestrian situation right there with people and cars. So we're solving, it's going to be a one-way circulation flow. But if you go back to maybe the entrance or the cover 3D image, it kind of shows what we're doing right there. Board member Whalen and Chair Moore, that shows exactly what we're doing. So defining the pedestrian circulation and really just supporting that so you don't get that completely awkward structural condition that you
Okay.
noted.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, Mr. Cunningham, looks like you have a question.
And Mr. Cunningham, you're still muted.
Okay, thank you. Michael, what's concealed under the ridge of that tile roof? Is that an empty void? Is there rooftop equipment there? And ultimately, can that height be reduced?
Yeah, there's structure. Again, we're trying to we're removing the, keeping the height of the existing element to the right. Oh, you can see the building to the left there, which is kind of a mixed bag of things. We're keeping the height of that, the squared element to the left, and then removing all of the tile, and then keeping the structure, which is trusses and framed elements, because it's the most cost-effective way to try to, salvage what's there.
Okay, but is it necessary to
Yeah.
keep the
Yeah,
truss elements?
we can't reduce the height of that. Otherwise, we end up rebuilding the entire roof of that over the laundromat. So this has been kind of the most minimalistic refresh, kind of reskinning of the existing structure without ripping off the roof and getting into, there's no work proposed to the interior of the laundromat. So even working around that roof, taking the tile off is one thing, but we can't get into restructuring the roof because the laundromat needs to stay in business.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Okay, anybody else? No? All right, so let's go to comments. We could have all the board members up on screen. All right. Okay. Richard, you're in a new venue. Why don't you take a start at comments?
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with the public comment where this intersection has a very consistent, if humble, a very strong, consistent language and context. And those buildings that are out of context are very simple and humble and non-distinct to where they don't interrupt the context. So I think there is a solution here, Michael, that can be, I don't mind if the building is schizophrenic, but I think that it's important to stay within the context of this charming, though humble part of town. And with the mansard roofs and the humble architecture, I think there is probably a solution where you only touch the very corner with a stucco mass, turn the corner, and do what you want with the back end and maintain this strong context that this building already, the front of this building already has with the rest of the street. And I think that's it.
Okay, who else has comments? Everybody? Okay, well, let's just go down the line. Mr. Cunningham? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think, first of all, the Morton Bay Fig and the Palm need to be addressed comprehensively before the project goes any further. I would recommend an arborist report. You're showing construction right up to the property line and right up against these trees. The Morton Bay Fig in particular will just keep growing forever. And if you're assuming that you can just build right up to it and stop without taking reasonable precautions, I think you're asking for trouble. I request that you consult with the city arborist regarding providing a parkway opening for street tree. If you continue with this architectural style, I think the rooftop equipment needs to be screened with the same TimberTech veneer that you're using on the front element. Sorry, I'm skipping around here. Courtney, you've got some sago palms in a couple locations where it looks to me like you might ultimately be courting problems with pedestrians passing by, where you've got some spiky fronds sticking out to poke people. I would like, if possible, for you to find more opportunities for shade canopy in the pedestrian areas and parking areas. I know your planters are pretty restricted, but any place you can find for tree that might spread, provide some shade would be helpful. And I do agree that this is, well, I have to say, I like this look. I just don't think it fits in this neighborhood. I have to go along that the context is very important here. I know that it's kind of loose. There are departures in this neighborhood, but as Richard pointed out, there are some very nice, humble Spanish buildings in the neighborhood, and I think we need to respect that with the design of this building. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, do you have comments?
Yes. I find this to be a very creative solution, given the building as it is and the use, the tenant, and the conditions. I think it's commendable. So I'm apparently going to stand alone on this, but I do like this suggestions. I think that perhaps some of the concerns might center around the TimberTech, and that if that were somehow reconsidered, that surface, that might help with some of the objections from some of the other board members. But I also don't agree with using the TimberTech if it was used on the roof. I think that's the wrong solution for trying to hide something on the roof, is to make those little projections all of a sudden stand out. So I think that, let's see what else I have here. Oh, and as for trying to blend this with something in the neighborhood, I don't know where you start. When you drive down that street, as I have many times, I can't see any conformity. So where would you go to say, I think I ought to make this look like that? So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whalen?
Yes, it does seem that the discussion of the day led by Sheila Lodge is about neighborhood compatibility. And while you could make a case that the block is a mixed bag, I do think there is a preponderance, or at least more than a 50% majority of imagery along that block that relates in vague terms to our Spanish colonial revival. And there's really nothing that I can see by way of the presentation that aligns this proposed design with modernist and more specifically post and beam, which is perfectly fine. The shade structure along the long length of the building seems perfectly fine. I do like the proposed volume, which resolves a lot of eccentricities about the existing building. I happen to think that it could be more of a success and maybe even a key point in the block if it were a simple plaster. Perhaps it has a modulated parapet that does something interesting and points to it as the center, which laundries often are in these neighborhoods, of community activity. I do think there is a missed opportunity I don't see the relationship of the horizontal wood siding to modernist or even mid-century architecture. I think that's quite contemporary, and that this solution is quite a contemporary solution. And then I do think the design is very successful in separating the pedestrians from the rather hazardous vehicular roadway. However, both the building and the planter are going to be targets of vehicles, and I think some special consideration about the eventuality of cars bumping into the building and the planter should be made. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Black, any comments?
I think for the most part, I would agree with the comments that have been made. I am troubled by the use of the timber tech material. It just seems a bit incongruous in that neighborhood. Maybe it's just a matter of rethinking the form of the laundromat and then the other entry down the alley there. So I think I think it really needs to be reevaluated in terms of its continuity with the neighborhood. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Six, you had something additional?
Yeah, one more comment. I know that it's not our purview, but I would hope that the applicant would consider that instead of flying and stilting their new ADU on with sophisticated structure and so forth, it might be easier to kill two birds with one stone and build atop that existing unfortunate existing unit. Just want to throw that out there as a suggestion and an idea.
Okay, thank you. I guess unfortunately, I'm falling on the side of neighborhood compatibility. You know, I like the freshness and the idea of sort of a facade facelift here that has big impact with minimal cost, but unfortunately, I'm struggling to see how it fits in with the context and also with the city's infill guidelines. It's difficult to make the leap that this is in keeping with that, with those guidelines. So would somebody like to craft a motion for this?
Mr. Chair, I will attempt one. I would make a motion for an indefinite continuance for the applicant to study a way, given the extreme limits of his program, another way to make at least the front part of this building more consistent with the prevalent context of the intersection and the streetscape. I would also say, and Bob, you'll have to help me here with the more precise things on the plantings. That would be my motion, and open to further suggestions, further discussion on specific plant materials.
I'll second the motion and add then that the applicant should return with a comprehensive arborist report focused on the Morton Bay fig and Canary Island palm. And in addition, the existing ficus tree on the site that's proposed to be preserved, that the applicant shall consult with the city arborist regarding adding street tree on the De La Pena Street side. And yeah, I agree with the comments regarding compatibility, and I think maybe the simple solution here would be to just turn this large element on the end of the building to white plaster. I do appreciate the fact that it screens the pretty obnoxious building to the left of this this project on the site. So that's definitely a plus for this. That's enough. Thank you.
I would,
Okay.
I would accept the addition to my motion, except for, I think it's going to need more finesse than just changing this from timber to white plaster. I think the white plaster is going to be very too high and too simple and too loomy. So Bob, I would stop your addition at the end of your landscape comments. Is that okay with you?
That's acceptable to me. I was just rambling.
Okay. So that's our motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, why don't we read that back if we could, so we're clear.
All right, so the motion is to continue indefinitely with the following comments. Given the extreme limits of the program, study a way to make the front part of the building consistent with the prevalent context of the intersection and the streetscape. The applicant shall return with a comprehensive arborist report focused on the fig and Canary Island plum and also the existing ficus tree to be preserved. And the applicant will also consult with the arborist about adding a street tree on De La Vina.
Mary, it's the Canary Island palm. I think you said Canary
Okay.
Island plum.
You're right. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? That sounded accurate to me.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's take our vote.
All right, so we have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
No.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes item 2, and I'm going to hand off the controls to Mr. Six, and I will be departing the meeting.
Thank you, Chair Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Moore. If all of the other board members would turn their screens off. So our next item is 3820 State Street. This is concept review, a proposal for an addition and remodel to an existing 2-story office building. Project entails an entire renovation of the exterior facade of the existing 33,259 square foot building with all new doors, windows, and exterior finishes, as well as an addition of 12,904 square feet split between the first floor, 1,496 square feet, and second floor, 1,902 square feet, and third floor, 9,506 square feet. To accommodate the new floor area, a subterranean parking garage is proposed below the existing parking lot at the rear of the site. A reconfiguration of the existing striping and planters within the existing parking is also proposed. Project requires a waiver for an alternative parking lot landscape design. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis and the following guidelines: Upper State Street guidelines and outdoor lighting design guidelines. So with that, I see that our applicant is here. And would you like to make your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thanks very much. Board members and staff, and whoever else is out there. So this project, which is not mentioned in the project description, will inevitably end up at the Planning Commission. And so we've got several hoops and stages to go through. What we're hoping for you today is to look at this initial preliminary concept, give us your input on mass bulk and scale and neighborhood compatibility. So it's a 1.8 acre site, as mentioned, with a 2-story building, 33,000 square feet, plus or minus. It's on the mountainside of State, about a block away from Hope Avenue. If we could go into the vicinity map, thank you, yes. So you can see that to the north is the Calvary Cemetery. And I'm using north in the true north because our property lines are almost exactly north-south, running away from State Street. So north side is the cemetery. The west is the Best Western Pepper Tree Inn. Directly across the street on State Street is the Macy's building, the Cumber Plaza, and the Macy's parking lot. And then on our immediate east side is the 2 banks. What is that? The Wells Fargo and Montecito Bank and Trust building, which you'll see as we go through the imagery. And if you could go to A50, please, and we'll start walking through the photos. So you can get the existing context. Yes, so the top right is an aerial view, which shows the location of the photos for reference. But the image directly to the left of that, number 1, shows the front of the building. And you also get a hint of the buildings on either side, the Pepper Tree and the bank building on the opposite side. So the existing building is roughly 50 feet away from the front property line, which is at the sidewalk. It's also on a pedestal that's a planter area that's about 5 to 6 feet high, depending on where you are. There's a drop to the site, to the Pepper Tree site there that also varies anywhere from 6 to 8 feet drop. And the building, the bank building on the other side is also on a pedestal, as you'll see. And there's parking in the front. We'll get into that when we look at the site plan, as well as in the back, of course. And if you go to the next image, number 2, which is just to the left of that, which shows the Pepper Tree in greater scope, and also the relationship between the 2 buildings. And also that there's this, besides the number of trees there at the forefront, there's a tall oleander hedge that divides the 2 buildings at the property line, and about a 12-foot planter on our side. So you go to image number 3, which is the bank building on the other side, please. Image 3, please. It's down below in 2.
And pardon my interruption. If it's not on image 3, maybe you could give a couple other verbal instructions to Timmy. He's trying to navigate.
Well, right below, right directly. Yeah, it's just to the left of the aerial. There is the bank building, which, although it's a 1-story, it's a tall 1-story, and it has a yeah, there you go. Thank you. And you can see, as I mentioned, it's also raised up off the sidewalk level. And you also, it's notable, I just realized there's not a single street tree or other tree in front of this building. Interesting. Okay, so number 4, which is just to the left of that image, is standing at the driveway looking at our existing building. And there you can see the planter that I was talking about, the raised planter, and just a better shot of the building and the driveway. Thank you. So we can go on to 5, which is Thank you. Yep, you found it. There's Macy's across the street. I know you folks are all familiar with it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time reviewing it. Number 6 is an important image because it's catty corner to our project, and it has a 3-story element that's right at the parkway on the Hope Avenue side. We are adding another story, and so this is important consideration. And then number 7 takes us back to our property, and we start to go down the driveway there. And you get an idea of, this is a 10-foot planter on our side, although the trees planted there are, as you can see, kind of pushing up against the building and then the bank building. You can see how the property rises to the back. It's about a 6% slope from front to back all the way. So by the time you get to the back of the building, that raised planter is right at grade. Next slide, or next image, which is, you can skip 8. It's another shot of the building, but number 9 is towards the back. This is the back northeast corner, looking at the back corner of the building, and you can see the pepper tree there in the distance, and you can see the existing planting on the back of the building. Number 10 is roughly in the same spot. I believe it's just to the right there, but looking up towards the mountains and the Calvary Chapel, you can see where the property line is. So there's a access and egress easement that runs all the way front to back of the property that's shared with the bank building next door. So they can exit through our property as well as enter, and vice versa. And you can go on to the next slide there, which is number 11 is on the other corner of the parking lot, looking back again towards the pepper tree. And you can see our building on the left and kind of the relationship of the two. So the oleander hedge there gets broken, and there's no railing even along there, and there's quite a drop. So we will also be providing a railing on that wall and reintroducing that hedge, if not also some trees along that side. Number 12 is looking directly at the back of the existing building, which there was this concrete canopy that was added about, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago. To, I guess, enhance this back entrance. But you can see it's basically a big rectangle, kind of brutalistic style. And we're changing that completely. It's more traditional. And next slide, which is 413. Yeah, so now you're turned around, you're looking back again towards the mountains. You can see the existing canopy trees, and this is part of our proposal. Because we're doing this underground parking garage, in the interior of the existing parking lot, we're going to have to be removing these trees. But our strategy is that we're also providing wider and bigger planters at the perimeter in order to compensate, and we'll be planting canopy trees in that perimeter. So, next slide, which is 14, takes us to that back northwest corner. You can see towards the left of that image is the back corner of the 2-story pepper tree there. And you start to see a little bit of the Calvary building and the lawns and Via Lucero, which is the street at the back. Number 15 is taking a few steps forward and sort of looking the other way. Again, you see Calvary Chapel, the back part. Which we'll go on to the next slide, please, number 16.
I just want to remind the applicant that we do have a 15-minute time clock going. So I think if we're already at 7 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So should I skip all this? Are folks familiar enough with the site?
Yes.
I think the key thing about this, I mean, part of what the review hinges on today is whether our landscape design is going to, we're not showing planting and trees, but we are showing planter sizes to accommodate for this underground parking. So this back parking area is an important consideration. We are making improvements at the street. So let's go on to the next A51, which shows a little bit of neighborhood context. And I'll just, rather than go through all of them, I'll just point out that just in the last 5 years, there was 2 buildings on the same block across the street, which are 3-story buildings. It's slide number 29, which is down there on the left, bottom left. This is the most recent, or actually just prior to Grace Village, the Mark building, which is pressing the height limit with a 3-story building. Similar to ours, it's 2-story in the front, 3 in the back. And then slide 28, which is right above that, where you have a 3-story building right at the sidewalk. All right, so let's go on to A1.1, which is the site plan. Because 15 minutes is not enough to walk through a big project like this. I'm sorry. So
once the timer runs out, the chair can give you more time. So just keep
it. Thank you. So key features about the site design. You can see on the site plan where we're pushing out the existing building in order to provide modulation and texture and massing, proper massing to the existing building, and also to achieve the growth of the building at the 3rd floor, primarily towards the back. And but if you focus in down at the bottom of the site plan on the right, on the State Street side, so we're expanding the planters there. On the left and the right-hand side, we'll be adding street trees and additional trees in the planters, existing planters. And if you could scoot up a bit. On the west side, we're removing some very large electrical equipment that's next to the building in that planter, so we'll be able to increase the planting on that side. And then you'll see here, if you could scoot up a little higher, please. There's the ramp going down, and you don't have to move the image, but on the left, the additional site plan that's to the left of this one shows the footprint of the underground parking. But basically, as you can see here, we're having to eliminate the planters that divide the parking currently between the aisles and the finger planters every 8 feet that are over that parking garage. But in compensation, we are increasing the planters first along Via Lucero. So you can see the dashed lines where the existing planters are and 3 curb cuts. So we're taking what are now curb cuts and turning those into planters and increasing the depth of the planter along Via Lucero, as well as where the exit and turn-in is, making quite a large planter there at the top right, where we'll also have a gated parking. And then as you come down the shared aisle there, we also are doubling the size of what otherwise would have been the planter dividing parking there to a 6-foot wide planter. So there'll be plenty of room for mature trees in all of those locations surrounding the parking garage. All right. And we're removing 8 mature trees. Will be more than compensating for that with the tree plan that we'll return with at some point. If you can go to the floor plan, which is A2.0. Just briefly, this again shows you at the first floor on the bottom left where we're pushing out the existing building without going beyond the planters, the existing raised planters at the front or along the drive aisle there. Towards the back is where we're pushing out the most. We're 250 feet away from the street on that side, so we feel like we can do that without imposing on anyone. And we're also on the west side in relation to the pepper tree. We've pulled this. You'll see the 3rd story back away from that side as well. So we're not imposing. So the second floor plan, which is just to the right, shows where we're cutting out interior areas of the second floor in order to create light wells to provide natural light to the inside of the building. And the 3rd floor, which is just above that, shows how we're concentrating the third floor mass towards the back, which on the photo sim, which is on the next page, you'll see that from the State Street side, it nearly disappears because of the distance back. And this we know again from which you'll see on the elevations when we get there. Let's go ahead and skip ahead to the elevations, which is the next sheet. So on the top elevation, the south elevation, which shows existing buildings on both sides as well, and has a dashed red line showing the outline of the existing building. There's a large mechanical enclosure at this on the second floor roof, which you can see is just about 3 to 4 to 5 feet below where we're going to end up being sort of our average third floor roof height. Parts of our third floor do come forward of that, but significant majority of it is behind it. So from the State Street side, that third floor is going to be much recessed.
So Kurt, I'll give you another 5 minutes.
Thank you. So we can go down to the next elevation, which is the drive aisle side, which, as you can see, we're sticking with a very traditional vernacular. Arched windows, true stone veneer, two-piece mission tile, probably metal windows haven't been selected, a ceramic tile in certain locations, etc. You go down to the next one, which is from the rear of the building. And this side, because we have significant mountain views on that side, both from the second and third floor, we've increased the window, maximized the window areas as much as possible. Part of the program was the owner was also wanting a dramatic two-story entry at the rear. And so that was incorporated with this design. We don't have, as yet, elevation facing the pepper tree. We want to get some sort of sense that this is, that we're headed in the right direction here before we go too much further with the design work. And then we could look at just briefly the section. Oh, we already looked at the section page. So, but if you go back to that, which is A21, yes. So we both have the building section, which shows how we're very schematically, how we're accommodating the third floor over the top of the second floor roof, and cutting through the second floor and both floor and roof in order to get to those light wells I mentioned, and also the basic program of the massing. And you can also see how the existing mechanical there at the second floor roof, existing second floor roof, is being removed, and of the relationship of our massing to that. And then the site section also shows both the slope of the existing rear parking lot and how we're accommodating that ramp and underground parking area, again, in just a very schematic way. And I would say that concludes my presentation.
And Mr. Six, you're still muted.
So thank you, Kurt, for that. And if we will open public comment. So Matthew, if you could do your spiel about our public.
Yes, so if you are joining us for this item and wish to speak, there is a raise hand icon in the top right-hand corner of your screen. The hand being red indicates that it is raised. So we'll give you a couple seconds to review and make sure you don't want to speak. All right, we have not received any written public comment, and I am not seeing anyone. Oh, there we go. We do have one. Perfect. So that's from Steve House. I'm unmuting you. You will have to unmute yourself now. And once you start talking, we'll start the 2-minute clock.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Yes.
Well, very shortly, Kirk, I think you've done a very admirable job of giving this building a fresh new look. My only comment is I wish that you wouldn't have such a direct knockoff of the front of the courthouse on the building. I mean, it's lovely, but I think that you're going to get a lot of blowback from that. And I think it needs to be more original at that entry. I mean, I don't know if that was the intention, but it is exactly mimicking the courthouse and the Great Arch. So thank you on a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Mr. House. I'm gonna just leave this slide up for a sec. We don't have anyone raising their hand just now. We haven't had any written public comment, and we actually, could we get the slide for how to sign up for the interested parties list? So if you are interested in seeing or being at all the hearings that this project will go through, you can contact the ABR secretary either by phone or by email, or you can send us a letter addressed to the secretary at our PO box. And all of this information is on the agendas. Mr. Chair, no one else is raising their hands, so I will turn it back over for you.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. If we could have the applicant shut his screen off and have the rest of the board back, please.
Oh, I request that the applicant stay on because he will be during questions. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Kurt, there you are. So are we all on? I guess we are because Kevin left. So why don't we start with you, Bob? Mr. Cunningham. There he is, Leon.
Yes, hi. Oh, okay, go ahead, Leon. Leon's muted. All right.
There we go. I don't have any questions at this point. There's a lot to consider here, and I think I'm not quite ready to make my questions.
Okay, so we'll go to you, Bob. Mr. Cunningham.
Okay, thank you. Really just one question. Kirk, did you consider for your parking lot over the parking basement, placing raised tree planters directly over columns that would support the roof?
Yes, yes. And if we go to that site plan page, I can show you where those are located. Which is, you need a page number, right? It's A1.1, sorry, there we are. So the site plan on the right, if we focus in towards where the parking attaches to the building. Yes, yes. So there's 3 raised planters adjacent to the building. Starting on the left-hand side, I can't really read. I think it's labeled 26. Yeah, they're all labeled 26. Those. So we're particularly wanting to get some trees adjacent to the building, and trying to figure out how to do that. Now, the way we were able to do that is we have walls and/or opportunity for structure below in the parking, the basement parking, so that we can accommodate the additional weight in these areas. So do you see the 3 that I'm referring to?
I do, but you're not answering my question, which was, I'm sorry if I didn't state it clearly enough. You need shade on the parking lot, and adding those planters on the north side of the building does not provide that. My question was, can you locate columns in the basement supporting the roof and also supporting tree planters in the open area of the parking lot above?
It may be possible. I would have to consult with the engineer on that, and it would certainly add to the size of the parking garage, I would think. But to be honest with you, I don't know. I do know that in previous projects that I've seen others propose, that putting planting over submerged parking is problematic because of the additional weight and water. But we
That's-
can certainly look at it at the next stage or
Okay,
some further stage.
That's why I based my question on the addition of columns that would support the planters. I'm not convinced it cannot be done, but yes, please do explore that. And that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Mr. Black?
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen?
Yes, thank you, Chair Six. A couple of minor things. Will the existing retaining walls along the entry and driveway receive any kind of treatment, or are they just going to remain?
Yeah, well, we do show on our elevations it's kind of a combined treatment of, let's see, you want to go to A3, please? Yeah. Of stone veneer and plaster. So, and in fact, there's a couple of places where there's looks like, some cracking and potential failure. So there would be some rebuilding of short sections, possibly reinforcement. But yes, in terms of finish, it would be plaster and or stone.
Very good, thank you. And am I correct in deducing that the new parking structure allows for direct entry into the building and up to the third floor?
Yes, they're in the, if we go back to A1.1 again. On the left-hand side there, the lower level parking, the other side of the sheet, the left side of the sheet. Yeah, this shows the entry at the basement level.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whelan. Leon? Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. So, Mr. Gadeen, couple questions, and I don't know what, I don't have a solution or apparent, oh, wow. But, this existing parking lot drops 10 feet from Via Lucero down to the building. Was there any thought to have the ramp go northerly and take advantage somehow of, building some of this? I know it wouldn't match up with the ground floor, but having the left-hand main portion of the parking garage take advantage and be actually above and above grade and shorten your ramp. Did you explore other alternate ideas to arrange this entry approach and manipulation of the sectional nature of this sloping site?
Yes, we went through several iterations. Obviously, this is not the only way it could be done, but we found that in looking at other possibilities, this was the most efficient way. It's true the ramp gets longer because it's going with the slope.
Yes.
Because of the fact that it's traveling with the existing slope, I think, but there was a misstatement. There's not a 10-foot drop. It's a 6%. It's a 6% drop. So there's maybe a 2 or 3 foot drop from Via Lucero to the building, maybe 2 feet. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
All right.
So yes.
Yeah. So my other question is, and I think if we can have go to the floor plans. Yeah, and zoom in on the left-hand ground floor plan. So as I understand, this is a box, and I understand the red line and so forth. And you are especially, well, a little bit on the front side, but a lot on the east side. You're occupying what I would consider precious foreground planting with building and arcade and so forth. The reason for that is to just to get manipulations in the building form, or is there actually some functional, I see some added square footage there. Is that a absolutely necessary program driven increase in square footage along the east side?
Well, along the east side, okay, yeah. Well, obviously it affects the floors up above. So if you look at, and you don't have to move the drawing, but it does affect both the floor plan and the massing at the second and third floor. And that particular corner at both the second and third floor of the building, the northeast corner, is the most precious part of the building in terms of the views, the sunlight, the northern exposure. There's a couple of outdoor areas there. It's a really prime spot on the site. So we were trying to take best advantage of that. And in order to build out and increase and get square footage on that side, obviously at the upper floors, also meant adding down at the first floor, but rather than turning it into square footage at the first floor, we've made it an open arcade, which is a very traditional feature, of course, as you know.
So if we shift over to the second and third floors, is this arcade? I see. So it's occupied. So you're gaining square footage there.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think those are my only questions. So
I would just one more addition to that, that again, this northeast corner, we felt because the property to the west is lower, right? It's dropping, that this northeast corner of the building is the least impactful in relation to surrounding buildings. And because the bank building is also some distance away from there, besides being, as I said, kind of a key location in terms of desirable square footage at the second and third floors.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So those are my questions. Shall we start with Mr. Cunningham on comments? Are you ready, Bob?
I am, thank you. May we go to the elevations, please? Okay, good, thank you. Kirk, I really appreciate your bringing Spanish Colonial to this part of State Street. I found the Mark and Grace Village to be kind of a poke in my eye. This is my neighborhood, and I had always hoped that additional architecture in this stretch of State Street would more emulate what Deddy Pikert did on the corner of Hope Avenue and State several years ago with his mixed-use building. So I do appreciate this. However, I have to say that I agree with Steve House's comment. I think this, you've got, the building is, I believe, too complex with the architectural elements and too grand. I think that the very big arching entries and the stonework and the towers are just a little over the top. I would appreciate it if you would, stay on this theme, but tone it down and simplify it. And please do what you can to get trees on the roof of the parking lot. I very much appreciate the fact that you're adding street trees. This building will be a benefit to the neighborhood, I have no doubt. I just believe it needs to be simplified. That's all for my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Black?
Yeah, my response when I first saw this was exactly what Bob said. It's just a little too over the top, maybe too many bells and whistles architecturally, but I think if it was just simplified, I think it could be very successful. It certainly would make a nice contribution to that neighborhood, as Bob said. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
So
first, I want to congratulate Kurt on a really great proposal. It's clear, the graphics are great, the drawings, the photographs. It's really commendable when you make such a strong presentation. And after listening to the others, I'm starting to fall into their camp. I have to admit, I was bewitched by these images without really seeing them through other people's eyes. My only comment was, I thought there were some rather large expanses of glazing, especially on the north side, that worked against the Spanish colonial revival imagery. However, in accordance with the other observations, I think a simplification, especially on the State Street side, do what you will on the north, are more in line with the character. But boy, what a wonderful change for this portion of Upper State Street to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Mr. Olson?
yes, thank you. I have trouble with the elevations, and perhaps simplification will help it. But it seems to me that a lot of these elements, the Spanish elements, are forced into this building. It doesn't please me to look at it. And I think there's great potential here. But at the moment, the elevations are disturbing to me. That's all my comments.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Olson. My comments are wholeheartely supporting the previous comments. Kurt, it's a beautiful design and presentation, but it's just too over the top with complexity, ins and outs. I mean, there's a style of Spanish architecture that can be very simply done, and I appreciate where the location that you have placed the third floor, and I don't think you need to be embarrassed about 3 stories straight up on the other non-State Street elevations. I think that simplifying, being closer to the box, having straight plain walls, less will be more in this case. And as I alluded in my questions, I think if you keep more respect with the, less ins and outs, you can save some of those precious existing planters in front of the east side and a little bit on the State Street side to help soften the building. So I think that I am in agreement that you can simplify. Don't be embarrassed about your third floor. Don't be embarrassed about simplicity. And I'm looking forward to a very fine Spanish vernacular building at this location. I also concur with Mr. Cunningham that there are technical reasons, you know, it's been done before, and ways to accommodate planters and conal shaped planters that reach down to the basement level to provide you with substantial trees mid parking. So with that, Kirk, I think you can speak up here, but I think that it would behoove you to come back to us before going to Planning Commission. Would you agree with that?
Mr. Six, actually, this could not go to Planning Commission right now. It has not submitted for DART, and that was the first step. So it's here to kind of gauge what you guys think before it starts its DART process.
So I would, does anybody have a motion to offer?
I'll take stab at it. I think I would like to make a motion for indefinite continuance for the applicant to restudy the architecture. The board has no objection to a 3-story building. It's appropriate in this neighborhood, but the building forms need to be simplified and made less complex. I don't know how much more I need to say. I think we've all stated what we feel, and I think Mr. Gradine is a good enough architect to understand what that means and to come back with a simplified and I would hope more elegant presentation. Now, sorry about that. The presentation is very good. More elegant design. Thank you.
Okay, and you want to add, I'll second that. Do you want to add your desire or request to have internal above parking lot planters for trees?
Yes, I would say that's strong direction for the applicant to study that to exhaustion. Thank you.
Okay, and Kurt, if I may add to your comment, Bob, I think that the size, some other board member mentioned it, the size of the, I know your client wants the grand openings, but there might be a way, they just look too grand at this point. There's got to be some better way to get a generous feeling, but yet a better way to handle the north and south openings. So in short, study refining the overscaled entries north and south. So we have, do we have, I second that. So do we need to reread the motion?
Yes.
Mary?
And just so everyone remembers, the chair is the one who has the power to allow the applicant to speak, and they should request to speak from the chair if they have any comments or questions, but no conversation at this time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you raise your hand, Kurt. Did you have something to say? Of course. No?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I've been trying to turn my microphone on. It hasn't been working. So I just wanted to thank you for your comments, and we'll take them to heart and come back with revised design. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mary?
All right, this is Mary. So we have the motions to continue indefinitely with the following comments. The applicant shall restudy the architecture. The board has no objections to a 3-story building, but the building forms need to be simplified and provide a more elegant design. 2, provide planners for the trees in the parking lots. And 3, reduce the grandness of the entrances and provide a better solution to the north and south openings.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Can I refine that to say no objection to a 3-story building, partial 3-story building as shown, as positioned?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mary. So we have a motion on the floor. Shall we take roll call, please?
Yeah, so we have Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, public. Thank you, staff. Thank you, board members, and goodbye from beautiful Santa Barbara.